Hi everyone, welcome back to Dobby Books. So, I want to show you something that I got just a couple of days ago. It is an update, a revision of a book I got way back in 1999 when the first edition came out. Now, for some of you, you may know that when my kids were younger, I spent a few years homeschooling them and then they went off, and graduated from the local public school. But during that time, one of the authors that I discovered was Susan Wise Bauer. And she and her mother, Jessie Wise, had published a book, and this was my introduction to the classical education model. And they added, in my opinion, just enough of a modern twist to it that it really, really appealed to me. And I have to credit Dr. Susan Wise Bauer and this original book for starting me on my self-education journey, because that's when I said, I wish I learned stuff like this in school. So I knew I had to take that responsibility on myself. So that's to her credit. Okay. So the new book that's come out is the old book, The Well-Trained Mind. Now, what they did with this brand new one, and this is now the 5th edition, but instead of calling it the 5th edition, they're calling it the Essential Edition, because they took some things out, and you'll see why in just a minute. What I want to do is show you my collection of the books that I've had since the beginning. In 1999, I ordered the original book, and I've made a few moves since then. I always had that first edition with me, and for some reason I can't find it. And because it bugs me to have incomplete things, I went ahead and looked for a first edition, first print of that very first book. And I found one on eBay in excellent condition. It's on its way, and now I'm a happy camper. But the second edition, which is labeled revised and updated, looks just like the first one. The picture on the front is a little more defined. So the original one had the same picture, trying to get away from the glare, had the same picture, but it was more opaque, it wasn't as clear. Here they cleared it out. This was the original book, and as you can see, I tabbed it to death. And I marked the 3 categories of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, plus all the subjects within that. So whether it was reading and writing or math or music or whatever, what I did. And I wrote a lot of notes in here. Oh my gosh, I still have my old address, my old phone number, and the different resources that were listed. I have circled. Oh my gosh, this was a really loved book. And look at this. I still have in here the notes that I wrote for each one of my 2 younger boys at this time. And they were both in the logic stage, and I was writing down what curriculum I was going to use for grammar or math or science. It's really cool. And then on the other side is another piece of paper I found. It says 2005, 2006. It has the name of each of my younger boys. One was 8th grade and one was 5th grade. And I broke it down to what each one was studying that year and which curriculum they were using for that year. And this is it brought back some memories of, I like to do this, you know why? Because it helps me to see where I was back then, what my thinking, how I was processing things, what was on my mind. And I also found, this was on history, and I broke down the days, lessons, day 1, day 2, day 4, what they were going to read, what they were going to outline, dates, projects they were going to do. I really learned. This was a really good learning experience for me, because I really came to appreciate the level of work the teachers had to become involved in. They had to be knowledgeable about their subject, and not just also know how to keep a class under control. But when you're putting together a curriculum and you have to see how much content is there, intelligently guess how much you're going to cover in a year, then break that down by semester, then by month, then by week, then by day. And even then you don't always finish that initial goal. I can understand their frustration and I can understand the pressures that they might be under. Now, I just had two younger ones at the time. The two older ones were already in school. But I felt the pressure. This helped me discover a lot of stuff about myself. So this was the second edition. And then they published their third edition and they changed the cover. So there's a girl on the cover. And I semi-tabbed it. So I think in here there's a lot less tabs. They're a lot more colorful. They're not the ones that you had to slide the little paper inside and and they'd always slide out. This one, of course, I labeled my different sections: grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And under logic, the ones that stood out was the section on how to outline. I tabbed that. And I can't see this one. I also tabbed, spelling, grammar, reading, and writing. And then under rhetoric, I had grammar and writing tabbed out. And I have tabs on the top. This one was under the logic stage, history study, year 2, rhetoric, history, and reading, year 2. So I guess I was working on that. 4th edition. This was the 4th edition, brand new cover. Again, more tabs. The same 3 sections, but I didn't worry about grammar any much. I didn't have any kids in the grammar stage. But at this point, I think I was using this. This one was published, what year? 2009. I didn't have any kids at home anymore, as far as school goes. They were all in school. But I think this was the one I used a lot for my own self-education. I looked at some of the great books lists under the rhetoric stage. I was working on trying to organize my thoughts. That was something I always struggled with, organizing my thoughts. And I found myself constantly going back to the logic stage to see how the notebooks were put together. Those of you who've read this are going to know what I'm talking about. How the notebooks were put together, what was expected, what kind of information was expected to be placed inside each section, how to write it up, what content you were going to use. Organizing is the big thing that I was trying to get my brain to do. And in other areas, I could delve more into the rhetoric. But this was my go-to forever. And again, I had my tabs at the top. Look at this. Oh my gosh. How to outline, writing resources, notebooks. Gosh. Literature discussion, book resources, notebooks. This is a great book for self-education, people. This is excellent. You don't have to be a kid to be following those suggestions in here. You really don't. All right, so now, the star of the show today is the 5th edition, which is known as the Essential Edition. And what's the difference? In the regular and the other 4 editions, each section would end with a resource list. But the problem with that is that things change so quickly that it wouldn't be long before some of those listed resources were just out of date. They'd been revised, or perhaps a business was no longer in existence. So what they decided to do with this Essential Edition is just to focus on the how-to. What and how to. And if you want to look up your resources, you go to welltrainedmind.com, and there you've got your online list of resources which can be updated so quickly, so effortlessly in comparison. And I noticed that in part 3 under the rhetoric stage, under the great books, history, and reading, they've deleted a section. It used to be university sources for great books curriculum. And this was, universities you could go to and perhaps participate in their great books programs. That's gone now. I think it's because, with the advent of so many online courses and resources on YouTube, it's just kind of not, it's just not really needed anymore. And then I've also noticed that in part 4, which is entitled Coming Home, How to Educate Your Child at Home, section 42, which is the yardstick standardized testing, they used to break it down, AP, CLEFT, SAT, PSAT, etc. Now they've just consolidated it, yearly testing and college level testing. They leave it at that, which makes sense, right? Because even now, some colleges are no longer requiring the SAT for students to be admitted. And a lot of it's online now. Even the tests are done online now. And I've also noticed that in section 45, this entitled Yelling for Help, Tutors, Online Resources, Distance Learning, Cooperative Classes, Colleges and Universities, they have deleted, get this, correspondence courses. I'm not even going to explain that one. I'm pretty sure it's self-evident why they had to delete that. At the end of every section, grammar, logic, rhetoric, is a sort of a summary. So, in the logic section, it starts, okay, here's the epilogue. It's charts, schedules, and worksheets, and it goes through each grade, the subjects they're going to study, how much time would be involved, how many days a week. These are all suggestions, sort of sample weekly pictures of what that week is going to look like for that child. It goes from 5th through 8th grade, which is the logic stage here. And then it goes into the notebook summaries. So in the well-trained mind, grammar stage, logic stage, rhetoric, they each keep a binder. And each binder has sections to it. And there's a science one, a history one, writing, literature. This is the logic stage. And within each binder, these are the different categories, different sections in each binder. Those are the tabbed sections. And that's where the child will place their work throughout the week. And this becomes their portfolio. That's still included in this book. Then it goes into sample weekly checklist. So it goes from Monday through Friday. You don't have to teach every subject every day when you're homeschooling. You can vary it because there's only so many hours in a day. And here's some sample weekly checklists. As you can see, this is included in every one of the earlier books. But the change is the curriculum planning worksheets. If I could show you one, just one book prior. So let's go to the logic section, epilogue. Here's the curriculum planning worksheet. The previous book, they have history, science, and they break it down. They list the particular curriculum that they mention. So that's the curriculum worksheet with all the listed resources that are included for each stage. One for grammar, one for logic, and then the other one for rhetoric. And that's there. But because the newest book is not listing the resources, but rather putting them online, when you get to the new book, it just tells you to go to welltrainedmind.com and you can get a sample worksheet on that. And I would imagine, I haven't looked at it yet, but I would imagine that you're entering your own resources and then going from there. This book, compared to the one just prior to it, you can see a difference in thickness. So the older one is on the top, the newer one is on the bottom. And it's just interesting how they've completely changed the cover. Isn't that cool? I love this new cover. You see the tree, you see the roots. It's just fantastic. I love how this sort of sets puts that mindset of setting a good foundation for a kid so that they can thrive as a person, as a student, as a lifelong learner. This is really an excellent book. This is listed as $39.99 hard copy. And I always recommend this to someone who wants to self-educate. This is the book that I send them to. If it's not this, then it's going to be Dr. Bauer's other book, The Well-Educated Mind, which is directed more towards adults. So whatever style you prefer, I need to break things down very simply for me, for my brain, to process things. Whereas others, the well-educated mind is perfect for them. So that's the new book that's out, available everywhere, and of course, available on welltrainedmind.com. Thanks, guys. Take care.